password or something along those lines.
Michael, Microsoft's perspective.
So Microsoft, we provide services in the different layers of the cloud service deployment that we've talked about at CSA before. So we're doing software as a service and platform as a service. So we happen to see a pretty good cross-section of types of abuse. For example, our Windows Live service is a consumer-facing service that does Windows Live Spaces and SkyDrive. And so what we see is the predictable things there is people misusing those in violation of our acceptable use policy to store things like malware or images that are unacceptable for a variety of reasons. And so that's what you would expect normally in that sort of scenario. And I would echo what Steve said earlier, which is in our platform as a service, we also have that respect for privacy, and we have a standard set of network controls that let us see stuff like network traffic that is aberrant or statistically anomalous, that would then let us hone in on abuse such as a botnet control channel or a spam relay or something like that. So pretty consistent with what the other panelists have said.
Alex, Facebook? Sorry, go ahead.
Unless the attacker actually uploaded it via a secure channel, which we're, I mean, we're starting to see more of that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there's some real challenges, especially with images. And I think we use the standard abuse channels that you would expect that for someone to notify us if those sorts of objectionable images would come up. Yeah, it's difficult.
That's also trying to work around the problem in a slightly shady way. Like they're essentially trusting you while the data is in transit as well, not just when it's at rest on the server. The Facebook approach to that is a little similar to what Michael was just talking about, which is we don't proactively scan everything that's out there. We rely on users to report data to us, and there's a lot of different forms that takes, but that's the key starting point is let other people tell you that it's bad, and then you're responding to a complaint rather than proactively invading someone's privacy. So as far as the different types of abuse that we see in the cloud, Facebook isn't a platform as a service. It's very much closer to software as a service. What we're essentially providing is users' data hosted in the cloud, and that changes the attack threat quite a bit, as you're now able to, when you get access to the cloud provider, I'm still tripping up trying to call Facebook a cloud provider. I don't really consider it a cloud provider, but that's essentially what it is. You inherit the persona of that person, whether it's their VM image or their Facebook profile or their Gmail account, in a way that isn't really possible when it's hosted in your own environment. And the attacks that we see on Facebook are really evolving from old style attacks that now can get a lot trickier when you can't really tell who it is that you're communicating with. Even though the IP space looks like it's coming from Amazon, people are pretty quickly realizing that there are known properties on Amazon that aren't Amazon. And in the attack scenarios that come out of that look a lot different. When you take the Facebook scenario, when a Facebook account is compromised, it's not clear that it's an attacker. It's the individual's identity that is taken over at that point. And the attacks look quite different. They're a lot scarier than they are when it's just someone's email that is compromised.
Just a follow-up question on the abuse. How many, or maybe you give me an idea of the volume of complaints you get from people whose accounts you have shut down, instances, accounts, services, whatever, that actually you thought were doing something nefarious, but actually were not? Is there a sense of volume? Does this happen a lot? Is it once in a
I would
blue
say
moon?
the vast majority, at least in our cases, it's activity that took place where the user didn't realize that other activity was taking place. The account's compromised and it was doing something that it shouldn't be doing, sending spam or soliciting money from people or uploading images that are used for spam somewhere else. And the tricky part there is communicating to the end user what activity was actually taking place that caused us to take action. We obviously have false positives, but I feel like it's a much smaller percentage when compared to users who were actually performing malicious behavior but just didn't realize it. And the challenge is telling them that they were really screwing up.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. It definitely falls into those two camps. There's either a user who's been compromised and may or may not know it, and then our action actually triggers their awareness of, you've had a problem here, and so we recover the account for them. Or the other bucket is the folks that are doing it intentionally, maliciously, and we don't tend to hear complaints from them when their accounts are deactivated for violating, state, local, state, and federal laws or whatever it is that they're doing. And I don't have the exact statistics, but I think I would echo that it's a small number of folks who complain about, a false positive that we've had.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's certainly an interesting dynamic because what is the law? It's almost like each provider has their own law that they've come up with, whether it's an acceptable use policy or something around how you can use their service. There's local things that you can go after in kind of borderless things, child pornography, keyloggers, banking, et cetera. But there's also kind of these little almost different aspects that everyone treats differently. Facebook's idea of abuse, I'm guessing, is quite a bit different than Amazon's, et cetera. So to me, that's a very interesting dynamic. But the next question really is around one of the interesting aspects, and someone was touching about this earlier in a presentation, is that a lot of vendors have basically taken security products and called them cloud in some way. So there's obviously people that deliver services in the cloud as a delivery mechanism, security as a service. But then there's people that are actually doing actual security for the cloud, not in the cloud. So really, what I find particularly interesting is that in order to develop a security product that fits all of these clouds is damn near impossible because they all are glued together differently. As much as we'd like to think maybe they all have web services, but you have to be very intimately knowledgeable about each platform. So the question really is, do you believe we're moving from a product security world to a platform security world where vendors or people participate within your security have to have deeper knowledge about what exactly is going on? Or do you think there's going to be kind of off-the-shelf continued, the AV for the cloud or virtualization for the cloud or firewalls for the cloud as we have today? When we start off with you.
Sorry. Yeah. From a few of the vendors that I've talked to, we've actually had to come in and do NDAs and kind of really go over architecture, some of the pieces as we've talked about deploying certain things places, and I'll get done kind of giving them a high level overview and drawing it out on the whiteboard, and they're just kind of left like in this deer in the headlight kind of gaze when you get done, and then it's like, okay guys, they start talking about how they're going to have to redo how they talk between different devices and how they scale between devices and scale horizontally because they don't have any one single device that you can put in place, or there's software running on one server. You can't deploy a server big enough for their software to handle the volume. And then even in how do you tie it into our kind of processes, if it's something that you would say want to give a customer access to, their product doesn't have the idea of APIs, it has the idea of a control panel or a management panel that, if we were using it just strictly for our purposes, would be fine. Our network guys would be using it, but if you want to deploy it to customers and let them manage it if they choose to, There's no way to do that currently, so it's a total re-architecture of their products and stuff. And it would be great if we were moving towards the securing the platform, because it'd make a lot of things that easier. But I don't know that all the vendors are on board with that yet.
Well, it's a
I
challenging
think it's
business conundrum, right? Because the
Yes.
margins are clearly not as good in services as they are in
Yeah, so
hardware or software.
From the stuff I've looked at, that's kind of they like the idea. Once you sit down, they get excited, and their guys start talking about how they could make that happen. But nobody's quite there yet.
How about from Amazon's perspective? I know I've heard the CTO Werner talk about how Amazon minus security doesn't use there's really no products out there within the AWS infrastructure that are designed for how you guys do. So you guys have a lot of homegrown or a lot of modified stuff. How about in security?
Well, yeah, Werner's right. There's a fair amount of secret sauce, right? A lot of the stuff that we've put together, we've engineered ourselves. The security group functionality, for example. We do rely on certain internal procedures and technologies for safeguarding our infrastructure from external attack, as well as trying to minimize pathways from one customer to another. I guess as far as thinking about moving to product or platform security, what I like about the way our offering is structured is that a customer could bring whatever security product they want and use it. Sort of as I introduced that fourth inspection tier in my talk earlier today. I don't want to be in a position where I dictate to a customer that they have to use brand X IDS or brand Y web application firewall. I'd much rather let them be able to use whichever one they want works best for their needs. And the way we've built our service, that is completely distinct from whatever tools and technologies we use to protect the infrastructure.
Okay. Stephen, from the shadow server standpoint, what's your thoughts on? So one of the risks that we had earlier that Michael outlined was around the unknown. How do you secure the unknown? Because quite frankly, people don't know necessarily what firewall they're behind, what IDS they're behind. What if there's a vulnerability within the stack that they're installing? What are some of your views on that, or the subject?
You're giving me the question about how to secure the unknown. That's a terrible question to give me. No, so yeah, I guess people. It goes into a few different aspects. So if you're trying to tackle one problem, you need to go about it. I don't know if we're talking about someone who's just using the cloud, or we're talking about the cloud provider. And you said some of these people, it's up to the customer. So how are they trying? What are they trying to solve exactly? If they're trying to, you're talking about IDS. I don't know what's going on. I'm unknown. I mean, you can set up your IDS, pull in emerging threats rule set, and be protected. One cool thing I think is actually being done in the cloud that I think is very useful that people can leverage. I mean, this could be a cloud, someone doing cloud email that can leverage this, or an actual individual organization, is services like the Postinis or the Message Labs. You want to, people can do spam protection or things around that, but these guys will actually provide you security in that they'll do virus scanning or other heuristics or their own homegrown stuff around inbound attachments. So I deal a lot with targeted attacks and APT. None of those guys are going to stop everything or even most of it, but they're going to do a lot better than most small organization or even medium size that doesn't have someone specifically dealing with this. And that when that malicious document file comes in or that malicious PDF file comes in, it's not hitting your mail servers first. It's actually going to a cloud service and it's stopping it. And that's one of the best examples of the unknown that I can think of where people are getting a lot of value and probably not really even realizing it. And
Great.
I'll still give them, back to the, you can go to some of those malicious networks. The guys are tracking malicious networks. Some of the public services where people are listing, the bad stuff that's going on. So you're the hosting provider. You could even be the individual IP owner. But if you're the cloud provider, whoever, there's different resources out there too. The unknown. Someone said this is bad. This is spamming. This is you got the spam house or other people that flag stuff. You get the stuff that you're not expecting or maybe you're not detecting, but someone else has found. And there's places and resources you can go to find out that hey, there's badness going on here.
Michael, what about from Microsoft's standpoint? You guys writing custom software for Azure?
Yeah, so we use, the real trick here obviously is, the controls are the controls. And the intent of the controls is